Hey, don't bug, it's the Critical Plug, and I got for you an album review of the new BYSTORM album, My Ghost Go Ghost. This is the debut album from the remaining members of Injury Reserve, with those members being Richie T, which is the MC, Parker Corey, the producer. And I would say this is their third LP, however, it feels weird to say that due to the fact, yes, this is in fact like an offshoot of Injury Reserve with the two remaining members, with the unfortunate passing of Groggs, who was really the glue that held the group together, that held the trio together. Not to take anything away from Richie T, not to take anything away from Parker Corey, but the man was really the energy. The man was really the MC to get in your face, the confrontational. He really brought the bangers to life. Coming to the scene with their mixtapes, which I absolutely loved, be it Live at the Dentist Office, Floss, the way they were so versatile, from making these unhinged bangers to something very introspective and deep. They were definitely a trio that I truly hoped would not go unnoticed. And even though I wasn't really in love with their debut, I still thought it was a decent start to go into the studio album territory. And due to the unfortunate passing of Groggs, he obviously was not able to make the second album. However, with the passing of him, there had to be some type of change. There had to have been some type of balance to be brought here, where Richie T, not exactly the most in-your-face MC, not exactly the most animated MC either. I would mainly say he was the brains of the operation, very cerebral. However, that doesn't mean he can't be expressive. That doesn't mean he can't be passionate. He's just not as lively. But when we got By the Time I Get to Phoenix, we really got into the mind of Richie and Parker Corey, where they brought us this searing, tripped out, hallucinogenic fever dream of an album, By the Time I Get to Phoenix, where it was just this endless detour and trip of avant-garde, of experimental rap. And as trippy and glitched out as this album is, it definitely takes more of a melancholic approach. And as trippy and abstract as this album is, and as trippy and abstract and glitchy as this album is, it definitely goes more into a melancholic territory here. It's definitely the darkest they've probably ever gone. And what's crazy to me is how the first taste we got of this duo was back in 2023 with Double Trio. But it wasn't really until last year, 2025, where we got the official singles leading up to this LP. First single being the meditative, compelling, and triumphant Zigzag, with these disembodied guitar embellishments and most of the time drumless production, as Richie delivers this matter-of-fact type of way vocal delivery that transitions into this ambitious, hungry, as Richie delivers this matter-of-fact type of way vocal intro that eventually evolves into just being so ambitious and hungry, and you could hear it in his vocal delivery. It's like the way he takes a breath in between, you could tell like he's not really doing too many takes here, if doing any takes at all. And he does this acceptance speech at the end, which kind of reminds me the way it like transitions, how it just goes from completely chaotic to just speaking in front of an audience. Like, it really does have like a Ari Aster, Beau Is Afraid vibe to it. And the production, I would say, would be like a combination of neo-psych, white noise. But in a way, I feel this is like an internal manifestation and affirmation of Richie's thoughts, as Richie goes into this super confessional inner monologue with these scattered rhythms, tone swells, and a dizzying refrain that goes completely haywire that makes me feel like my brain is being scrambled. And the way the track starts vibrating with these multi-vocal harmonies coming from all directions, it really does sound like a fantasy or a dream just coming to a glitchy, staticky end. And then after that, we got the sequel to Double Trio, which does appear on this LP. And I would say it's slightly more instantaneous, because yes, you do get the curious intro, but it does not waste any time to give you these blaring horns, like just this bright orchestra that just erupts. It's like a burst of melodic elevation. It's just so dynamic, it's so epic. And it just follows up with some of the most bizarre twist in production that I've probably heard all year. Like, the way this track is just so obscure, but simultaneously triumphant, it really does remind me of what it would be like if you had the Dipset era, the Diplomatic Immunity era, and you had producer Heatmakers and Just Blaze, and they were listening to nothing but Brian Eno, Godspeed, and this heat. Now take all these artists in mind, take all these bands in mind that they are consuming, and then somebody from the future comes through and hands them Death Grips the Money Store and Swans to Be Kind. That would be the equivalent of this. Because it's so uplifting, but also so pummeling. And we get the disembodied vocals from Richie that are pretty much all over this thing. And his vocal delivery is just so deep and so unique and has like a quirk to it. It reminds me of like an unhinged Jim Jones from Dipset. And the ending is just so layered and only what I could describe as this jazz symphony of destruction. Like, it's so mesmerizing, it's so beautiful, it's so powerful, but yet it's like I'm looking at this gorgeous annihilation taking place in front of me. And another single leading up to this was In My Town, which has a vast mixture of ambience, folktronica, with lyrics of economic struggle, gentrification of independent businesses, of mom and pop spots that Richie has gone to. Not only that, but preparing for fatherhood, which is definitely a key point in the first track here. Also aspiring to become a successful rapper. Like, the whole track just feels so desolate, so dystopian, so isolated. However, there is a very subtle build in intensity here as the track progresses. And as this track evolves, like, not only does it get more intense, that's very subtly done in a very genius way, but we are also experiencing like an onslaught of little sonic pieces that I'm still checking out. Like, as I've listened to this album numerous times, there are still things sonically I'm picking up on, and I do not think they should go unnoticed. Another single to this LP that I loved was And I Dance, which is probably the most heavenly, blissful track on the whole entire LP, with this super cloudy atmosphere, with these fuzzy drums that are almost boom bap coated, not to mention the auto-tune falsettos that are very Kanye coded that land on this album a lot. And I don't want people to think this is derivative of that. I feel like it is inspired by that, and they're just building on, and to be honest, really more innovative than Kanye was with his own idea. And I know that sounds crazy, but with all these layers, with all this concept matter, with everything they are putting in here, from the structuring, the way the track progresses, this is something even Kanye couldn't do, in my opinion. With its colossal staticky crescendo, it's like I'm ascending into the afterlife, into heaven, while also trying to get a good reception on the radio. Certainly a acceptance of the apocalypse anthem. These are just the singles. There is fantastic deep cuts on this record as well. And this may be kind of a stretch here, but I feel like there is certainly a dynamic here, like a juxtaposition of like a Joy Division, New Order, but reversed, with Ian Curtis passing and their first material being super dark. A little bit of a new lineup, new vocalist. They had just bangers, continuous albums that were very instantaneous, very groovy, definitely not as dark as Joy Division for sure. Or I would even say Talk Talk. In the beginning, their stuff was very instantaneous, very accessible, but as their albums continued, they got more dark, more depressive, definitely more ambitious, definitely less of a party, and more in time for the apocalypse. So to me, I feel this is the very dystopian sequel, especially with the track Dead Weight. which is definitely a moment where the production becomes entrancing, dizzying, but also visceral, with its very cavernous, shouty refrains that do remind me of Travis Scott, with these totally spastic layered drums and guitar loops, where Richie gives this vulnerable, somewhat panicked, somewhat anxious vocal delivery, where he even sounds panicked at some points with these false stops in the production. It's basically where you don't really have to experience what Richie is going through to feel his hysteria, especially when the whole thing just detunes and dissipates at the very end. The track Grapefruit is where we discover more unsettling feelings from Richie, where Richie is definitely showing more range here. Like showing a lot of emotion, but having it done sequentially well. And probably one of the most catchy refrains here, Grapefruit. And probably has the most haunting, ominous array of production on this track. It feels so wintry and eerie with these backing melodies hovering over these layered keys and strings that sound so ominous. As Richie is sharing these delineations of artistic integrity, shredding the publicity stunts, shedding basically the rollout culture, while reminiscing on the come up and injury reserve, and also exploring Richie's own inner turmoil, own insecurities, which again, the instrumentation, how linear it is, really does capture the thought patterns and reminiscing of Richie. And a lot of these tracks definitely show the tangibility of the inner workings of Richie's mind. But also there are moments here where he is just pouring his heart out, like on the track Can I Keep You For Myself, as Richie does, as I alluded to earlier, pull from the 808 and Heartbreak Kanye vibe, but they make it so mournful, so sorrowful, almost bordering on emo. And there's so many tracks here where we get the guitar chords, where Richie's vocals undergo like these transformations, like a metamorphosis. Like listening to this is really the equivalent of, like I said before, going into Richie's mind, his innermost feelings. Like on the opener where he has these raw vocals, but yet the auto-tune falsettos as well, with also these layered echoed vocals, while Richie is emoting heavily to this romantic partner who is also the mother of his expected child, where he has fear of losing her attention, affection, how everything is going to go towards the child. But simultaneously, he is talking about being grateful that they are able to have a child together, start a family, but simultaneously feeling like he's running on a very small window of time, which has this colossal outro, which sounds like, I believe to be a baby crying, but again, like there's so much linear, multifaceted, multi-layered instrumentation going on, so much sonic depth going on, that it really feels like you're witnessing the before and the after, and just time just moving by, time just transpiring. And the closer, which is a beautiful, tear-jerking outro, which is indeed tribute to Groggs, reminiscing on the times with him, how he motivated him, reminiscing on the times they had, reminiscing on his motivation through his most tumultuous times. And even though he passed, the comfort of his spirit is still there, while simultaneously saying that his spirit has been there all along, but also asking the spirit to stay with him, needing that comfort, needing that memory. It's like you're trying to figure out what it is that's haunting you, or who is the person with you that is giving you this comfort, and not being too sure, but then when you figure it out, they're gone. And I feel like it's just crushing and incredibly heartbreaking, especially if you're a longtime fan of Injury Reserve. And especially hearing the sorrow and the mournful tone in Richie's voice is just heartbreaking. So yeah, overall this album just blew me away. And with the singles, I was curious what they were gonna do, what would be the follow-up to By the Time I Get to Phoenix, if they were able to make an album as powerful or mind-blowing as that. Because with By the Time I Get to Phoenix and My Ghost Go Ghost, I feel My Ghost Go Ghost is certainly the sister album to By the Time I Get to Phoenix. But I can honestly say I think I enjoy this a little bit more than I do By the Time I Get to Phoenix. And honestly, there wasn't really a terrible track on here. There was a track here I thought could have been better, but not terrible, like the track Best Interest with Billy Woods, where At some points, Richie's vocals sound kind of buried, and Billy Wood's vocals and Billy Wood's part is very brief. But I do love the very detuned, very vicious strings that are on this thing. It sounds like someone is just playing the violin till the strings break and they're still playing. But aside from that, this is an amazing. But aside from that, amazing record in my eyes, and an incredible new start. And I would only hope this is a new start right here. It doesn't just end with this, and they continue to just evolve, be more abstract, and really push the envelope and see how far they could possibly go. Because with the soundscapes and the layering and how dark this is, how dense this is, how multi-layered this is, this really does capture, again, the inner thoughts, inner feelings of Richie on this LP. Because with the soundscapes, the layering, this just brings you to the most inner, darkest, most personal thoughts and feelings of Richie on this LP. And they're just delivering this in the most plethora of abstract elements and obscure genres they could possibly think of. So yeah, an amazing record, and if you do fancy yourself a hip-hop fan, if you do fancy yourself an experimental fan, or a folktronica fan, any genre they touch on, please, I recommend you check this album out. I'm feeling a 4.5 out of 5 on this album. But if you've given this a listen, what did you think? Did you love it? Did you hate it? And why? And that's it. Critical plug, hit me with a sub, show me love. My opinion, if you hate it, your view's still a dub. Please subscribe, keep the channel alive. BYSTORM, critical plug, my ghost go ghost. Till we meet again.